My daughter-in-law didn't show up at my son's funeral. Hours later, she posted a picture drinking in Cancun with the gardener. The caption said, "Enjoy life while you can." That's when I received a message from my son and froze. "Dad, come to my house now." Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. I never thought I'd bury my son alone. Standing in that funeral home on a gray Tuesday morning, watching the handful of people who came to pay their respects to Richard, I kept glancing toward the entrance, waiting, hoping. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe her flight was delayed. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation for why Olivia, my daughter-in-law of 8 years, wasn't here to mourn her husband. The funeral director approached me with that practiced sympathy they all master. "Mr. Morrison, should we wait a few more minutes?" I cleared my throat, trying to maintain whatever dignity I had left. "No, let's begin." 37 people came to say goodbye to my son. I counted them. 37 people who cared enough to take time from their Wednesday to honor Richard's memory. His wife wasn't one of them. I delivered the eulogy myself. What else could I do? I talked about Richard's childhood, his love for baseball, how he'd graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern, how proud I was when he started his own consulting firm. I didn't mention how he'd struggled with anxiety in recent years, or how distant he'd become from everyone, including me. I didn't mention how his marriage seemed to be falling apart, though I'd pretended not to notice. As people filed past the casket, offering their condolences, I heard the whispers. "Where's Olivia? Isn't that his wife? How awful for her to miss this." The sympathy in their voices made my chest tighten. If only they knew. After the service, I drove to the cemetery alone. The hearse followed behind me, carrying my son's body. I should have been focusing on Richard, on saying goodbye, on grieving properly. Instead, my mind kept circling back to one question. Where the hell was she? Back at home that evening, I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone. I'd called Olivia 6 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. I'd sent text messages, no response. Richard's death had been sudden. A heart attack at 34, they said, stress-related. I'd called Olivia immediately after the hospital pronounced him dead, and she'd seemed appropriately shocked, appropriately devastated. She'd cried on the phone, asked about arrangements, promised to fly back from her sister's house in Phoenix, where she'd been visiting. That was 4 days ago. I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I checked social media. Richard had always been private about his personal life, and I'd never been one for Facebook or Instagram. But grief makes you do strange things. I found Olivia's Instagram account easily enough. Her profile picture was still her and Richard from their anniversary dinner last year, both smiling, his arm around her shoulders. She looked radiant in that photo. Blonde hair perfectly styled, green eyes bright with happiness, or what I thought was happiness. I scrolled down through her recent posts, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't yet name. Photos from Phoenix, dinners with her sister, shopping trips, all posted after Richard's death, all showing a woman who looked anything but grief-stricken. Then I found it. Posted 3 hours ago while I was delivering my son's eulogy was a photo that made my blood turn to ice. Olivia, in a bright red bikini, cocktail in hand, standing on a beach with crystal blue water behind her. She was laughing, her head thrown back, completely carefree. Next to her stood a man I recognized, Miguel, the gardener who'd been working on their landscaping for months. His arm was around her waist, and they were both grinning at the camera. The location tag read, Cancun, Mexico. The caption made my hands shake. Life's too short not to live it. Cheers to new beginnings. I stared at that photo for 20 minutes, reading and rereading those words. While I stood over my son's grave, throwing dirt on his coffin, his wife was toasting new beginnings in Mexico with another man. The comments were even worse. Friends congratulating her on the trip, asking if she was finally happy, telling her she deserved this. One comment from her sister made my stomach turn. So glad you're done with all that drama. Miguel is perfect for you. Done with all that drama. My son's death was drama to be done with. I closed the laptop and walked to the liquor cabinet, something I rarely did. I poured 3 fingers of whiskey and sat back down, trying to process what I'd seen. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of family dinners, holidays, birthdays. I'd watched Olivia become part of our family, had grown to care for her like a daughter. I'd even defended her to Richard when their fights got bad, telling him that marriage required patience and understanding. What a fool I'd been. My phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number, but somehow I knew exactly who it was before I even looked. "Dad, come to my house now. We need to talk. Don't tell anyone. Richard." I dropped the phone. It clattered on the kitchen floor, the screen cracking, but I barely noticed. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely pick it up again. I read the message 3 times, then 4, then 5. It had to be some kind of mistake. A cruel joke, someone who'd gotten hold of Richard's phone. But the number was different, and who would do something so sick? I grabbed my car keys with trembling fingers. I had to see for myself. I had to know what kind of nightmare I'd stumbled into. Because one thing was certain. I'd just buried my son this morning, and dead men don't send text messages. I drove to Richard's house in a daze, my mind refusing to accept what seemed impossible. The familiar tree-lined street looked the same as always, but everything felt different now. Wrong somehow. I'd been here just 2 days ago, helping Olivia pack some of Richard's things before her supposed trip to Phoenix. She'd been crying then, or at least I thought she had been. Richard's house sat dark against the October sky. A single light glowed from the kitchen window in the back. My hand shook as I used my spare key to open the front door. "Richard?" My voice cracked as I called out. Silence answered me. I walked through the living room, past the couch where I'd comforted Olivia 4 days ago when the hospital called. Past the family photos on the mantel, Richard's college graduation, their wedding day, Christmas mornings. Everything looked exactly the same, yet nothing made sense anymore. The kitchen light drew me forward. As I rounded the corner, I froze. My son sat at his own kitchen table, very much alive, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of him. He looked up when I entered, his face pale and drawn, dark circles under his eyes that I'd never noticed before. He'd lost weight, a lot of weight. His clothes hung loose on his frame. "Dad." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My brain struggled to process what my eyes were seeing. This was my son, alive and breathing, sitting in his kitchen 3 hours after I'd watched his coffin lowered into the ground. "You're supposed to be dead." The words came out strangled, barely human. Richard's face crumpled. I know how this looks, how insane this must be for you. Please, sit down. Let me explain." I remained standing, my legs locked in place. "I buried you today, Richard. I threw dirt on your coffin. I gave your eulogy. What kind of sick game is this?" "It's not a game." He stood up slowly, his movements careful, deliberate. "Dad, I'm in serious trouble. The kind of trouble that could destroy not just me, but you too. Everything we've worked for, everything our family has built." "What are you talking about?" Richard ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him make thousands of times since childhood when he was nervous or scared. 6 months ago, I made a mistake at work, a huge mistake. I was handling the Meridian Industries account. You remember? The pharmaceutical company? They were our biggest client, worth $2.5 million annually. I nodded numbly. He'd talked about that account constantly, how it was going to set his firm up for years. I discovered they were falsifying their clinical trial data, hiding serious side effects from a new arthritis medication. People were getting sick, Dad. Really sick. Some were dying. His voice broke. I should have reported it immediately. But Meridian's CEO, James Crawford, he offered me $500,000 to keep quiet. "Just look the other way," he said. "Let the FDA approval process continue." My stomach dropped. "Please tell me you didn't take it." Richard's silence was answer enough. "Jesus, Richard, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking about Olivia's spending, about the mortgage on this house, about the debt we'd racked up trying to keep up appearances. She wanted the renovations, the new car, the vacation to Europe. $500,000 would have solved everything." He looked up at me, tears in his eyes. "But I couldn't do it, Dad. I couldn't let people die for money." "So what happened?" "I went to the FBI. turned over all the evidence, became a whistleblower. Crawford was arrested last month, and the medication was pulled from the market. But before they got him, he made sure I'd pay for betraying him. Richard walked to the kitchen window, staring out into the darkness. Crawford has connections, Dad. Bad connections. The kind of people who don't forgive and don't forget. 3 weeks ago, I started getting threats. Phone calls telling me that I'd destroyed too many careers, cost too many people, too much money. They wanted me to disappear permanently. I sank into a chair, my legs finally giving out. So, you faked your death. Dr. Peterson helped me. He's an old friend from college, works at the hospital now. We staged the heart attack, falsified the death certificate. Peterson said I had, maybe hours before Crawford's people found me. This was the only way. The pieces were starting to come together, but one huge question remained. What about Olivia? She was devastated when I called her. She cried on the phone. Richard's expression hardened. Olivia knew everything, Dad, about the Meridian account, about the money I turned down, about the threats. She knew I was planning to fake my death. He paused, his voice dropping to barely audible. She was supposed to play the grieving widow for 6 months, then quietly move away and meet me in Canada. We'd start over together. But she's in Cancun. With Miguel? Richard's laugh was bitter and broken. Yeah, I saw the Instagram post too. She was supposed to wait, Dad. We had a plan. But apparently she had a better one. I thought about the photo, about Olivia's radiant smile, about the comments from her friends. She was never planning to meet you in Canada, was she? No. I figured that out when I saw my life insurance policy had been cashed in. $750,000 paid out to my loving widow just yesterday. Richard turned back to face me. She played her part perfectly, didn't she? The shocked wife, the grieving widow, too distraught to even attend the funeral. She probably figured being mysteriously absent would make her seem even more tragic. The full scope of the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. She let me bury an empty coffin. She let me grieve for you while she was planning her vacation with her lover. I'm sorry, Dad. I never meant for you to get hurt like this. I thought if I could just disappear, start over somewhere else, maybe everyone would be safer. But I couldn't let her get away with this. She not only betrayed me, she betrayed you too. Made you suffer while she counted her money. I looked at my son, thinner, haunted, but alive, and felt something shift inside me. The grief I'd carried for 4 days began transforming into something else entirely, something harder and colder. What do we do now? I asked. Richard met my eyes, and for the first time since I'd walked into his kitchen, I saw a spark of the determination that had made him successful in business. Now we make sure she doesn't get to enjoy that money, and we make sure she pays for what she put you through. How? A slow smile spread across Richard's face, and I realized my son had inherited more of my calculating nature than I'd ever known. Well, Dad, legally speaking, I'm still dead. Which means Olivia is about to discover that being married to a dead man has some very serious complications. Richard moved to the kitchen counter and pulled out a laptop I'd never seen before. His movements were careful, methodical, like a man who'd been planning something for a long time. There's more you need to know, Dad. Things I discovered after I was supposed to be dead. He opened the laptop and turned the screen toward me. Olivia wasn't just planning to abandon me in Canada. She was planning to destroy me long before that. The screen showed email exchanges, bank records, text message screenshots. My eyes struggled to focus on the details, but Richard walked me through each piece of evidence with the precision of the business consultant he'd trained to be. 3 months ago, I started noticing money missing from our joint accounts. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $300 there. When I confronted Olivia about it, she said she was buying surprise gifts for our anniversary. He clicked to another screen. She was buying gifts, all right, just not for me. Photos of expensive jewelry, designer handbags, and luxury hotel receipts filled the screen. All purchased during times when Olivia claimed to be visiting her sister in Phoenix or shopping with friends in Chicago. Miguel wasn't just our gardener, Dad. They'd been having an affair for 8 months. These hotel receipts show they were meeting twice a week, sometimes 3 times. Always on my credit card, my hands clenched into fists. She was spending your money to cheat on you. It gets worse. Richard's voice was steady, but I could see the pain behind his eyes. When the FBI investigation started, and I told Olivia I might have to enter witness protection, she didn't just agree to come with me, she encouraged it. Said it would be an adventure, a chance to start fresh. But look at this. He opened a new folder filled with more screenshots, text messages between Olivia and someone named Marcus Financial Services. He was already talking to a private investigator dad. Not to help protect me from Crawford's people, but to gather evidence that I was mentally unstable. Look at these messages. I leaned closer to read. The messages were cold, calculating. Olivia describing Richard's anxiety, his drinking, his erratic behavior since becoming a whistleblower. He was building a case that he was having a mental breakdown, that he might hurt himself or others. She was going to have me committed? Worse than that? She was setting up a scenario where my death would look like suicide. A mentally disturbed whistleblower who couldn't handle the pressure and took his own life. She even researched how to make it look like I'd been planning it for months. Richard clicked to another file. Financial documents showing Olivia had taken out additional life insurance policies on him without his knowledge. Policies worth over $1 million total, all with suicide clauses that would still pay out if he waited 2 years after the policy date. She's been planning this for 2 years, Dad. Long before the Meridian situation, she married me, convinced me to take out massive life insurance, and then waited for the perfect opportunity to cash in. The room seemed to spin around me. This wasn't just betrayal or even greed. This was something much more sinister. She was planning to murder you, or drive me to suicide, which would be cleaner legally. The private investigator was documenting everything to support her story. Stressed businessman, money problems, legal troubles, history of depression. It would have been an open and shut case. I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the neighborhood looked peaceful, normal. Inside this kitchen, I was learning that my daughter-in-law was essentially a predator who'd spent years planning to kill my son for money. But then you faked your death first. Dr. Peterson's plan gave me an unexpected advantage. Olivia thought she'd won. She got her insurance money without having to commit actual murder. She could play the tragic widow, collect her payoff, and start her new life with Miguel without any blood on her hands. Richard pulled up another screen showing bank activity. She wasted no time. Insurance money deposited on Monday, $50,000 transferred to Miguel's account on Tuesday. Plane tickets to Cancun purchased Wednesday morning. She was out of the country before my body was even cold. Except your body was never cold because you were never dead. Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Richard's expression shifted, becoming more calculating. Olivia doesn't know that I'm alive, but she also doesn't know that I found all this evidence before I died. She thinks she covered her tracks perfectly. He opened a new folder labeled Insurance Fraud Evidence. The contents made my breath catch. Richard had documented everything. The forged applications, the unauthorized policies, the payments to the private investigator, the affair with Miguel, even communications showing Olivia had researched methods of murder that would look like accidents. She committed multiple felonies, Dad. Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, theft, adultery with financial implications for the divorce proceedings she was planning to avoid by becoming a widow. Richard closed the laptop. The question is, what do we do with all this information? I sat back down, my mind racing. We could go to the police, have her arrested for fraud. We could, but there's a problem with that approach. Richard leaned against the counter. If I reveal that I'm alive, I have to explain why I faked my death. Dr. Peterson could lose his license, maybe go to prison for falsifying records. The FBI witness protection people will be furious that I went off script, and Crawford's people will know exactly where to find me. So we're stuck. Not stuck. We just need to be smarter about this. Richard sat back down across from me. Olivia thinks she's won. She's got her money, her lover, and her freedom. She's probably planning to stay in Mexico for a few months, let the grief period pass, then come back and sell the house, liquidate everything else, and disappear forever. What's stopping her? Well, technically, she can't sell the house or access most of our shared assets while I'm legally dead. The estate has to go through probate, which takes months. But she's got the life insurance money, so she figures she can wait. Richard smiled grimly. What she doesn't know is that I documented her fraud before I died, and dead men can still file insurance claims disputes. I stared at my son, seeing a side of him I'd never witnessed before. The anxious, overwhelmed man I'd worried about for months had been replaced by someone harder, more strategic. What are you planning, Richard? I'm planning to let Olivia enjoy her vacation for exactly 2 more weeks. Let her get comfortable, spend some money, make some plans. And then I'm going to systematically destroy every lie she's built. He opened the laptop again. I've already filed disputes with all 3 insurance companies claiming fraud. The investigations will freeze her accounts within days of being initiated. Can you do that while you're dead? I set up the disputes before I died, with instructions to my lawyer to file them if certain conditions were met. As far as the insurance companies know, Richard Morrison suspected his wife was planning to kill him and took precautions. He pulled up legal documents. I also changed my will the day before I died, leaving everything to you and cutting Olivia out completely due to suspected infidelity and financial impropriety. The scope of Richard's planning was staggering. You've thought of everything. Not everything. I didn't think she'd be stupid enough to post photos of herself partying in Mexico 3 days after my funeral. That was a gift I couldn't have planned for. Richard's smile was cold. Those photos, combined with the financial records showing money transfers to Miguel, will make the insurance fraud case airtight. What about Miguel? He's complicit in this. Miguel's the least of our problems. He's just a guy who thought he was dating a rich widow. When Olivia's money disappears and the fraud charges hit, he'll disappear too. Men like Miguel don't stick around for poor women with legal problems. I looked at my son with a mixture of pride and concern. This is a dangerous game, Richard. What if Olivia figures out you're alive? Then we accelerate the timeline. But I don't think she will. She's too busy celebrating her victory to question it. He closed the laptop again. Besides, Dad, she's already made her biggest mistake. Which is? She underestimated both of us. She thought you were just a sad old man who'd grieve quietly and never ask questions. She thought I was too weak and anxious to ever fight back. Richard's eyes hardened. She was wrong on both counts. I felt something settle in my chest. A calm determination I hadn't experienced in years. What do you need me to do? For now, just keep being the grieving father. Don't change anything about your routine. But in 2 weeks, when the insurance companies freeze her accounts and she comes running back, demanding answers, I need you to be ready. Richard met my eyes. Because that's when we spring the trap. And that's when Olivia learns that some games have consequences she never saw coming. The 2 weeks that followed were the longest of my life. I had to continue playing the role of the grieving father while knowing my son was alive and hiding just 20 minutes away in a small apartment he'd rented under a false name. Every day felt like walking on a tightrope, maintaining the facade while helping Richard orchestrate what he called Olivia's reckoning. I visited Richard's grave twice a week, just as a bereaved father would. I brought flowers, stood there for appropriate amounts of time, and even talked to the headstone when other visitors were nearby. It felt obscene, performing grief over an empty coffin, but it was necessary. Several neighbors and family friends approached me during these visits, offering condolences and asking about Olivia's well-being. Such a tragedy, Mrs. Henderson from down the street said during one visit. Poor Olivia, losing Richard so young. Is she holding up all right? I haven't seen her around. She's taking some time away, I replied, the lie sliding out easier than I expected. Staying with family. The grief has been overwhelming for her. What I didn't tell Mrs. Henderson was that I've been monitoring Olivia's social media obsessively. The Cancun photos continued, beachside dinners, sunset cocktails, spa treatments, shopping sprees. Miguel featured in most of them, sometimes with his arm around her, sometimes kissing her cheek. The comments from her friends had evolved from sympathy for her loss to celebration of her healing journey. Her sister posted, "So proud of you for choosing happiness. Richard would want you to live your best life." That comment made me want to throw my phone across the room. Richard had been busy during those 2 weeks. From his temporary apartment, he'd been feeding information to insurance investigators, providing them with time-stamped evidence of Olivia's affair, her suspicious financial activities, and most damning, her social media posts showing her celebrating in Mexico days after her husband's funeral. The investigators are calling it one of the most clear-cut cases of insurance fraud they've ever seen, Richard told me during one of our secret meetings at a diner outside town. He looked healthier now, having gained back some weight and lost the haunted expression he'd worn that first night. 3 insurance companies, $1.7 million in fraudulent claims, and she's literally posting evidence of her crimes online. When do they act? Today, actually. The accounts should be frozen by this afternoon. Olivia's going to wake up tomorrow morning unable to access any of her money. Richard stirred his coffee slowly. I estimate she's already spent close to $80,000 in Cancun. When she can't pay for her hotel room, reality is going to hit pretty hard. What if she just stays in Mexico, disappears? She can't. Miguel doesn't have that kind of money, and without access to the insurance funds, she's essentially broke. Her credit cards are tied to accounts that are about to be frozen. She'll have to come back and face the consequences. Richard was right. On Thursday afternoon, my phone started buzzing with calls from a number I recognized, Olivia's cell phone. I let them all go to voicemail. By evening, I had 12 increasingly frantic messages. The first few were confused. Timothy, something's wrong with my bank accounts. Can you call me, please? By the 7th message, panic had crept in. Timothy, I'm stuck in Mexico. The hotel is saying my cards aren't working. I need you to wire me some money until I can figure this out. The final messages were desperate. Please, Timothy, I know you're getting these. I'm scared. Something's happening and I don't understand. They're saying I can't leave the country until I settle my bills. Please help me. I played each message for Richard the next morning. He listened with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not satisfaction exactly, but a grim sense of justice being served. She's really panicking, I observed. Good, she should be. Richard closed his laptop where he'd been monitoring news feeds about insurance fraud investigations. The FBI contacted me yesterday, contacted my lawyer claiming to represent my estate. They want to interview the surviving family members about possible financial irregularities involving the deceased's wife. They want to interview me and Olivia once she's back in the country, which, according to the Mexican authorities, should be very soon. They're not going to hold her indefinitely, but they are requiring her to settle her debts before leaving. How is she going to do that without access to her accounts? Richard's smile was cold. That's where Miguel comes in. Turns out he's been bragging to his friends about his rich American girlfriend, posted photos of the expensive gifts she's been buying him, the luxury hotels they've been staying at. When the money dried up yesterday, so did his enthusiasm for their relationship. He left her, took the first flight back to Chicago this morning. Olivia is alone in a foreign country with no money, no friends, and a growing list of legal problems. Richard leaned back in his chair. I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. I didn't feel sorry for her at all. Every time I remembered standing over that empty grave, throwing dirt onto a coffin that contained nothing but weighted pillows, my sympathy evaporated. When does she get back? Her flight lands tomorrow evening. She managed to contact her sister, who wired her enough money for a plane ticket. But she's coming back to a very different world than the one she left. Are you ready for this? Richard nodded slowly. I've been ready since I saw those Instagram posts of her laughing on the beach while you buried an empty coffin. His voice hardened. She humiliated you, Dad. She made you grieve alone while she celebrated with her lover using money she stole from our family. That's not something I can forgive. And you're sure this will work? The insurance fraud case is airtight. She'll either take a plea deal or go to trial, but either way she's looking at serious prison time. The money she stole will have to be returned, plus penalties and interest. Her reputation is destroyed, and she'll be lucky if she doesn't end up owing more than she's worth after legal fees. Richard paused, looking out the diner window at the ordinary suburban street outside. But the legal consequences are just the beginning, Dad. The real justice comes when she realizes that everyone knows what she did. Her friends, her family, our neighbors, they're all going to learn that she's not a tragic widow who lost her husband too young. She's a con artist who tried to cash in on that husband's death while betraying him with another man. She'll try to contact me when she gets back. Let her. But remember, as far as you know, I'm still dead. You're just a grieving father who's slowly learning that his daughter-in-law isn't who he thought she was. Richard reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry you have to keep pretending to grieve for me, Dad. I know how hard this has been on you. I squeezed back. Having you alive and safe is worth any amount of pretending. This will all be over soon. Once Olivia is arrested and charged, once the truth comes out publicly, I can start the process of legally returning from the dead. It'll be complicated, but Dr. Peterson has connections who can help smooth things over with the authorities. And then what? You can't go back to your old life. No, I can't. Richard Morrison will have to stay dead, at least officially. But Timothy Morrison's son can start fresh somewhere new, with a new identity, and a chance to build something better. Richard's expression softened, maybe even with his father if that father wants to leave this place behind and start over too. I thought about my empty house, my quiet retirement, the loneliness that had been my constant companion since Richard's supposed death. The idea of starting fresh, of having my son back in my life, was more appealing than I cared to admit. We'll see, I said. First, let's make sure Olivia gets exactly what she deserves. Richard smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it was a real smile, not the calculating expression he'd worn while planning his revenge. Oh, she will, Dad. She definitely will. Tomorrow night, when she walks into that house, expecting to resume her life as a grieving widow, she's going to discover that some lies have consequences she never imagined. Olivia's plane landed at 8:30 on a cold Friday evening. I knew because I'd been tracking her flight obsessively, the same way I'd been monitoring everything about her for the past 2 weeks. Richard and I had spent the afternoon making final preparations for what he called the confrontation. I was sitting in my living room, pretending to watch television, when my phone rang at 9:45. Olivia's number flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering, just long enough to sound like a man who'd been lost in his grief. Timothy? Her voice was strained, exhausted. Thank God you answered. I'm so sorry I haven't been able to call. There were problems with the phone service in Mexico, and then my flight was delayed and everything has been just awful. Olivia? I kept my voice carefully neutral. I was wondering when you'd get back. I'm at the house now, but something's wrong with the locks. My key isn't working, and there's some kind of notice on the door. I can't read it properly in the dark. Her voice cracked slightly. Could you come over? I know it's late, but I'm scared to be alone right now. I glanced at the clock. Right on schedule. The locksmith Richard had hired had changed the locks that afternoon, and the notice on the door was from the FBI, informing Olivia that the house was part of an ongoing fraud investigation. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Thank you, Timothy. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're the only family I have left now that Richard is... She broke off, making a sound that might have been a sob, but sounded more like exhaustion. The drive to Richard's house felt surreal. I'd made this trip hundreds of times over the years. Family dinners, holidays, helping with home repairs, babysitting their dog when they traveled. But tonight felt different. Tonight I was driving toward a reckoning that had been building for weeks. Olivia was standing on the front porch when I arrived, looking nothing like the radiant woman from the Cancun photos. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her skin pale and drawn. She wore wrinkled clothes that looked like she'd slept in them, and her eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion or tears, I couldn't tell which. Timothy, thank you for coming. She rushed toward me, attempting to embrace me, but I stepped back slightly. The movement was subtle, but she noticed. Her expression flickered with confusion. Let me see this notice, I said, walking past her to the front door. The FBI document was official and intimidating, full of legal language about asset freezing and ongoing investigations. I read it slowly, watching Olivia from the corner of my eye. She was pacing behind me, wrapping her arms around herself. I don't understand any of this, she said. Why would the FBI be involved with Richard's death? It was a heart attack, natural causes. I turned to face her fully for the first time. In the porch light, she looked even worse than I'd initially thought. There were dark circles under her eyes and her hands were shaking slightly. "Olivia, where exactly have you been for the past 2 weeks? I told you I was in Phoenix with my sister, dealing with the grief, trying to process everything." The lie came out smoothly, practiced, and then I took a few days in Mexico. The doctor said travel might help with the depression. Mexico. I repeated the word flatly. Just for a few days. Sarah thought a change of scenery might help me cope with losing Richard. Her voice grew stronger, more confident, as she settled into her story. "I know it might seem insensitive, but I was falling apart, Timothy. I needed to get away from all the memories here." I nodded slowly, as if accepting her explanation. "I can understand that. Grief affects people differently." Relief washed over her face. "Exactly. Thank you for understanding. I knew you would." She gestured toward the house. "But I still don't understand why the FBI would be involved, or why my locks don't work. Maybe we should call someone, get some answers." I pulled out my phone. "I have the number for Richard's lawyer. He might know what's going on." "Yes, please call him. This has to be some kind of mistake." I dialed the number Richard had given me. His lawyer, David Chen, had been briefed on our plan and was expecting the call. He answered on the second ring. "David, this is Timothy Morrison. I'm here at Richard's house with Olivia, and there's an FBI notice on the door about some kind of investigation." I paused, letting him speak. I see. When did this happen?" Olivia moved closer, trying to hear the other side of the conversation. I turned slightly away from her. "Insurance fraud?" I said, loud enough for her to hear clearly. "What do you mean, insurance fraud?" The color drained from Olivia's face. She grabbed my arm. "What's he saying?" I held up a finger, continuing to listen to David's explanation. "Multiple policies, unauthorized applications." I looked directly at Olivia. "David, Olivia is right here. She says she doesn't know anything about this." "Timothy, what is he talking about?" Olivia's voice was rising, panic creeping in. "He says the FBI has evidence that someone forged Richard's signature on several life insurance applications. Large policies that Richard supposedly took out without telling anyone." I watched her face carefully. "They think it might be connected to his death." "That's impossible. Richard died of a heart attack. The doctors confirmed it." I continued talking to David. "Financial irregularities? What kind of irregularities?" Another pause. "Account transfers to unauthorized recipients, suspicious spending patterns." Olivia's hands were shaking visibly now. "Timothy, tell him this is all a mistake. I don't know anything about insurance policies or financial irregularities." "David wants to know if you can account for your whereabouts over the past 2 weeks," I said to her. "The FBI apparently has questions about some large cash transactions that happened right after Richard's death." I was grieving. I was with my sister. But her voice lacked conviction now. "He says they also have questions about social media posts. Photos posted from, where did he say, Cancun?" I let the word hang in the air between us. Olivia's face went completely white. She took a step backward. "How do they know about Cancun?" The admission slipped out before she could stop it. I ended the fake call with David and put my phone away. "So you were in Cancun, not Phoenix, with your sister." I can explain that. After Phoenix, I needed more time to heal. Sarah suggested Mexico might be therapeutic, but she was floundering now, her story falling apart. Therapeutic. I repeated the word the same way I'd said Mexico earlier. "Was Miguel therapeutic too?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "How do you know about Miguel?" "The FBI showed me photos, Olivia. Photos of you in Cancun with another man. Photos posted on social media while I was standing over my son's grave, throwing dirt on his coffin." My voice was getting harder, colder. "Photos of you celebrating with your lover using money from Richard's life insurance." Tears started flowing down her cheeks, but they looked more like panic than genuine remorse. "Timothy, you don't understand. I loved Richard, but our marriage was complicated. He was distant, anxious all the time. Miguel was just a friend who helped me through a difficult period. A friend you were sleeping with for 8 months while married to my son. How do you—" She stopped, realizing she was only making things worse. "Look, I made mistakes, but Richard's dead, and nothing can change that. Can't we just move forward as family? I stared at this woman I'd welcomed into our family 8 years ago. This woman I'd defended to Richard when their fights got bad. This woman who'd stood in my kitchen 4 days after my son's death, crying in my arms about how much she missed him. You're right about one thing, Olivia. Nothing can change the past. Nothing can change the fact that you let me bury my son alone while you were partying with your boyfriend in Mexico. I turned toward my car. The FBI will be in touch. I suggest you get a good lawyer. Timothy, wait, please, you have to help me. I don't have anywhere else to turn. I stopped and looked back at her one last time. You should have thought about that before you decided to cash in on Richard's death. I drove away, leaving her standing alone on the porch of the house she could no longer enter. In my rearview mirror, I saw her collapse onto the front steps, her head in her hands. But I wasn't done yet. Neither was Richard. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of Richard's temporary apartment. He was waiting by the window, and I could see the tension in his shoulders even from a distance. This was the moment we'd been building toward for 2 weeks. How did she look? He asked as I climbed the stairs to his second-floor unit. Terrified, exhausted, caught. I sat down heavily in his small living room. She tried to lie at first, but when I mentioned the FBI photos and Miguel, she fell apart. Good. She needs to understand that her actions have consequences. Richard was pacing now, nervous energy radiating from him. Tomorrow morning, she'll wake up to find FBI agents at whatever motel she's staying in. They'll arrest her on insurance fraud charges, and that's when the real consequences begin. Are you ready for what comes next? Richard stopped pacing and looked at me directly. Dad, I've been dead for 2 weeks. Tomorrow, I get to come back to life and watch the woman who betrayed us both face justice for what she's done. His expression was grim but determined. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the parking lot in a thin layer of white. Tomorrow would bring the final act of our carefully orchestrated plan, and Olivia would learn that some betrayals carry a price she never imagined she'd have to pay. The FBI arrested Olivia at 6:30 on Saturday morning at the Budget Inn, where she'd spent the night. I wasn't there to witness it, but Richard had a contact in the bureau who called him with updates. She'd tried to run when they knocked on her door, he said, but there was nowhere to go in a motel room with one exit. Richard and I met at the same diner where we'd been planning this moment for 2 weeks. He looked different this morning, lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. She's been charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and money laundering, he told me over coffee that had grown cold while we waited for news. Bail was set at $500,000. Can she make bail? With what money? Her accounts are frozen, her credit cards are maxed out from the Cancun trip, and Miguel disappeared the moment her funds dried up. Her sister might try to help, but Sarah doesn't have that kind of cash lying around. I thought about Olivia sitting in a jail cell, probably still wearing the wrinkled clothes she'd traveled in. 2 weeks ago, I might have felt sorry for her. Now I felt nothing but a cold satisfaction that justice was finally being served. When do you come back from the dead? Richard smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since this whole nightmare began. This afternoon, Dr. Peterson has everything arranged with the hospital administration and the police. The official story is that there was a mix-up with patient identification, that Richard Morrison was in a coma rather than dead, and that he's made a miraculous recovery. Where will anyone believe that? It doesn't matter if they believe it. What matters is that it's legally documented and medically supported. Dr. Peterson has colleagues who will swear to the confusion, and the hospital's lawyers have already agreed to treat it as a medical error rather than fraud. Richard leaned forward. The beauty of it is that once I'm officially alive again, all of Olivia's insurance claims become void automatically. She'll owe back every penny she collected, plus interest and penalties. She'll go to prison. For a long time. David thinks she's looking at 10 to 15 years, especially if she refuses to cooperate with the investigation into the other fraudulent policies. Richard's expression hardened. And she'll cooperate, because she's going to learn some very interesting information about her boyfriend, Miguel. What kind of information? Miguel wasn't just a gardener having an affair with a married woman. He's been running a long con targeting lonely wives in wealthy suburbs. Olivia is the third woman he's seduced and convinced to defraud their husband's life insurance. The FBI has been tracking him for 18 months. The scope of Olivia's stupidity was staggering. She thought she was playing Richard, but Miguel had been playing her all along. She was just another mark. Exactly. Miguel probably encouraged her to take out those extra insurance policies, helped her research ways to make Richard's death look natural, maybe even suggested the mental instability angle. Richard shook his head. She thought she was the predator, but she was just prey for a bigger predator. Where is Miguel now? Mexico probably, or maybe Costa Rica, somewhere without an extradition treaty. But the FBI will catch up to him eventually. Richard looked out the diner window at the gray October morning. The important thing is that Olivia is going to realize she threw away 8 years of marriage, destroyed her life, and went to prison, all for a man who never cared about her at all. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, I drove to the hospital to witness my son's resurrection. Dr. Peterson met me in the lobby, looking nervous but determined. He was risking his career to help Richard, but he'd explained that he couldn't stand by and watch a good man be destroyed by a predatory wife. "Are you ready for this, Timothy?" he asked as we walked toward the elevator. "I've been ready for weeks." Richard's hospital room was on the 4th floor, the same floor where he'd supposedly died 2 weeks earlier. When I walked in, he was sitting up in bed dressed in a hospital gown, looking appropriately weak and confused for someone who'd just emerged from a coma. "Dad?" His voice was hoarse, uncertain. "What happened?" I remember chest pains and then nothing. The performance was flawless. Even knowing it was an act, I felt a surge of relief at hearing my son's voice again. "You've been in a coma, son. We thought we'd lost you." Dr. Peterson entered with a clipboard and a concerned expression. "Mr. Morrison, I need to explain what happened. There was a significant medical error involving patient identification. Your son was never actually deceased. He was in a catatonic state that mimicked death, but our monitoring equipment malfunctioned, and several staff members made critical errors in diagnosis. But we had a funeral," I said, playing my part. "I know, and I cannot apologize enough for the trauma this has caused your family. The hospital will cover all costs associated with the error, and we're conducting a full investigation into how this happened." Richard squeezed my hand weakly. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you've been through. What matters is that you're alive." I looked at Dr. Peterson. "When can he go home?" "A few more days of observation, just to make sure there are no lingering effects from the coma." Dr. Peterson made notes on his clipboard. "I'll also need to contact your son's wife. She should know about his recovery immediately." "About that," I said carefully. "Olivia was arrested this morning, insurance fraud." Richard's eyes widened in genuine surprise, or a perfect imitation of it. "Arrested? What are you talking about?" "While you were in your coma, she filed multiple life insurance claims. Apparently, she'd taken out several policies without your knowledge and was trying to collect on them." I watched Richard's face carefully. "The FBI says she was working with someone else, a man named Miguel." "Miguel? Our gardener?" Richard's confusion looked absolutely authentic. "Dad, I don't understand any of this." Dr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should let Mr. Morrison rest. This is obviously a lot to process after a traumatic medical event." "No, I need to understand what's happening." Richard tried to sit up straighter. "Olivia tried to collect life insurance money while I was in a coma? She thought you were dead, son. We all did, because of the hospital's error. But apparently, she'd been planning this for a long time." I pulled out my phone and showed him screenshots of Olivia's social media posts from Cancun. "While I was planning your funeral, she was in Mexico with Miguel, celebrating what she thought was her newfound freedom." Richard stared at the photos, his face cycling through shock, hurt, and anger. "She was cheating on me for 8 months, according to the FBI, and she was trying to steal money by pretending I was dead." "She wasn't pretending, Richard. As far as she knew, you really were dead. She just didn't seem very broken up about it." I put the phone away. "The FBI has evidence that she was planning this long before your medical emergency. She may have even been hoping something would happen to you." Richard leaned back against his pillows, looking devastated. 8 years of marriage, Dad. 8 years, and she was planning to cash in on my death. I'm sorry, son. I know this isn't what you want to hear while you're recovering. No, I need to know the truth. Richard's voice grew stronger, more resolved. What happens to her now? Prison, most likely. The fraud charges alone could get her 10 years, and if they prove she was conspiring with Miguel to target other men, it could be much longer. Dr. Peterson checked his watch. I should let you both have some privacy. Mr. Morrison, I'll be back to check on you this evening. After the doctor left, Richard and I sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. The performance was over, at least for now. My son was officially alive again, and Olivia was facing the consequences of her betrayal. How do you feel? I asked. Free, he said simply. For the first time in months, maybe years, I feel completely free. He looked out the hospital window at the city beyond. I know I can't go back to my old life exactly as it was. Too many people know about the medical error, and there will always be questions, but I can start over. What about the Meridian situation? Crawford's people? Crawford died in prison last week, heart attack, and his organization fell apart once the FBI arrested the key players. I should be safe now, especially with a new identity and a fresh start. New identity? Richard smiled. Well, I can't very well go back to being the Richard Morrison who supposedly died and then came back to life. But Timothy Morrison's son Robert could start a new consulting business in a different state, maybe somewhere warmer than Chicago. The idea appealed to me more than I wanted to admit. Robert Morrison. I like the sound of that. What about you, Dad? Are you ready for a new chapter too? I thought about my empty house, my quiet retirement, the loneliness that had been my constant companion. Then I thought about the past 2 weeks, working alongside my son to bring justice to someone who'd wronged our family. It had given me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Robert Morrison is going to need a business partner, I said. Someone with experience and wisdom to help guide a new consulting firm. Richard's smile was radiant. I was hoping you'd say that. 3 months later, Robert Morrison Consulting opened its doors in Charlotte, North Carolina. The business cards listed Robert Morrison as CEO and Timothy Morrison as senior partner. We specialized in helping companies navigate ethical challenges and fraud prevention, expertise we'd gained through hard experience. Olivia was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to insurance fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. Miguel was eventually captured in Guatemala and extradited to face charges for running a criminal enterprise that had defrauded at least 6 families. The insurance companies recovered most of the money Olivia had stolen, though she'd managed to spend nearly $100,000 during her brief taste of freedom. On the anniversary of Richard's supposed death, we visited the cemetery where an empty coffin still lay buried under a headstone bearing my son's name. We brought flowers, not out of morbid humor, but as a reminder of how close we'd come to losing each other forever. Do you ever regret it? Richard asked as we stood beside the grave. Everything we put Olivia through? I thought about the question seriously. I regret that it came to this. I regret that she made the choices she made. But I don't regret protecting our family from someone who would have destroyed us both without a second thought. Richard nodded. She had every opportunity to be honest, to work through our problems, to build a real life together. Instead, she chose deception and betrayal. The consequences were her own doing. As we walked back to our car, I reflected on how much had changed in 1 year. I'd lost a son and gained him back. I'd lost a daughter-in-law and gained my freedom from her manipulation. I'd lost my quiet retirement and gained a new purpose, a new business, and, most importantly, a deeper relationship with the son I'd almost lost forever. Olivia had tried to profit from what she thought was Richard's death, but in the end, his resurrection had given us both a new life. Justice, I realized, sometimes comes in the most unexpected forms.